Nothing beats coming out here on a bright and beautiful day with a fantastic ocean to fish at. Hey, do you just wonder why every video game has a fishing mechanic in it? Well, not every video game, but the ones that matter. Listen, I understand this might be a niche thing, but I absolutely enjoy it when there's just a fishing mechanic in video games. There's just no experience like playing an inferior gameplay loop just to get to the fishing portions, as that is what it really means to be a gamer. Disclaimer, I'm being sarcastic. All jokes aside, I genuinely love playing some games' fishing mechanics, as they kinda spice up the gameplay loop and give me time to rest and enjoy just the numerous variables and accomplishments that come with the actual games. So I thought, why not make a ranking of some of the fishing systems I have played in the numerous amounts of games that I've played. Ugh, that was a mouthful. There's a few caveats to this ranking. It can't be a dedicated fishing game. Things like fishing sim, there has to be an alternative goal. 2, I have to have played the games before. C, I am not going to be going over every game I've ever played's fishing data. That's probably not the right one. Echo. I also will not be ranking MMOs, as that is a lot more of a slippery slope for me, as by default they go into a higher list. These rankings are also going to be with my own opinion and random thoughts equated to them, so good luck deciphering what any of this means. This is also not really a definitive list, just things that I think are least fun to things that are the most fun. With all this being said, let's get down to the last place, and it has to go to... Oh yeah, that's right, Pokemon has a fishing mechanic. Well, it makes sense why it's last. Listen, I know you don't play Pokemon for its fishing adventure or anything of that nature, but it still has one of the worst mechanics I've ever witnessed. For those of you who do not remember how you fish in the games, it is a relatively simple thing to do. For the 2D installments, usually you would just go into the bag, go to key items, choose your rod next to the water, and fish. You could also have a hotkey bound to that rod, so you could skip going to the bag, but it still has just the worst mechanics. I mean, the real mechanic is not even that good. You just press a button when you're prompted by a text box. The purpose of doing this was just so you could get water Pokemon. Usually if you didn't have one to begin with that learned surf, or to just grind some small levels out, or catch the Pokemon that were in them. But once they got rid of the surf HMs, catching fish wasn't that big of a deal, because you could just go and use whatever the surf Pokemon was and just go into the water. Or when you did have the HM surf, you could surf into the water again and just catch whatever you wanted. It wasn't necessarily useful, plus it was not that fun to do in the first place. For this, it has to go into F tier. Alright, pulling up the next one, we got Nier Automata, my beloved, one of my all-time favorite games, with a very good combat and story. It also has the most amount of joke endings, especially one where you die if you eat a fish. Now it has the most unique way of fish, throwing your pod into the ocean and it just acquires them after a while. The act of fishing in the game is not that important except for when you're in the sunken city. While here, if you start fishing, you have a chance to gain a new pod only once. It's really cool, and the pod itself is really useful. It gives you the laser beam. It's a nice reward for just fishing out of your own self-interest. There is not an interesting mechanic when it comes to the fishing though. It's very much just meant to be a great lull to the already fast gameplay. Now with all that being said, it isn't that unique with its actual catching mechanic. Just like the previous example, it is simply just a wait for the indicator and press a button. Nothing much in the way of gaining anything from the fishing besides peace and quiet, but otherwise just a time waste. Also F. Anyways, Next up, we've got... Listen, Engage is definitely a game that my friend has an opinion about, but I will not be speaking on the story. But in fact, it's fishing. Now, if you're gonna ask me why not rank the Three Houses fishing, I don't own that game, I didn't play it, I can't rank it, but I'm almost certain it must be better than Engage's fishing. Anyways, this game's fishing is less than serviceable, with it having the easiest mechanic I have ever seen and the worst limit. The mechanic works by acting as a button masher and limiting you to 2 attempts per fight, grossly keeping me from my fun of being the world's best fisherman. The difficulty in the fish is also not that hard if you are pretty okay at just spamming, unless you're my friend John, who physically cannot spam buttons. From my experience, you can basically get near the end without the minigame popping up. Side note, when I was recording this initially, there was one fish that escaped me. I lost the recording, but I hate that fish now. Fuck this fishing, it's just not that good. It gets a D tier anyways, but that's being generous. Anyways, moving on. Minecraft. Listen, I've had an argument with one of my other friends where we kind of went back and forth on the purpose of it. And it's realistically, he tried to convince me and he got close, but I can't put it that high. You see, one of the interesting things about it is that it is primarily used for food, or you can try your luck to get better items depending on the biome and where you're fishing. It's relatively useful. For example, you can pull random books out of the ocean to possibly invest in enchanting certain items. That's cool! The only problem with this is that the alternatives are kinda better than attempting to fish for it. You see, the chance table for pulling rare items is so low that you might as well never need to touch a fishing rod for its actual intended purpose. Plus, the enchanting table, villagers, which automatically break the game, but with the newest updates kind of fix that, and random chests you can find all provide better resources while also emphasizing the main concept of the game: better exploration. In a way, fishing becomes so obsolete in this game that I don't even like touching it. This isn't also to mention the fact that the interactivity between the player and the fishing is kinda dependent on particles, because if you decrease your particles, the splash effects can also decrease, lowering your chance of actually seeing when you pick up a fish. All in all, it's okay, it's pretty decent. I put it in C tier. What's next? Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing is probably one of the cutest games with an actual purpose to fishing, besides just doing it for your own entertainment. Animal Crossing is actually meant for 2 things: money and completion bonuses. You could just fish on your own though, you don't have to do it. It's meant to be a comfy game. You don't have to always do everything in a comfy game. They also have the added benefit to having a sort of flavor text for every time you catch something. That's a very cute thing in my opinion. Every time you get a new fish, you're incentivized to put them in the museum when it comes to trying to show off your achievements. They also act as a way to gain some bells, as they have a selling price and allow you to acquire acquire money. Now the mechanics are not that hard, but it's not supposed to be. I mean, the game is meant to be more relaxing and casual, and I respect that. Plus, the music that plays in the background does actually give this sense of accomplishment, no matter how big or small your catch is. There is also the added bonus that the type of fish you can catch is different depending on where you fish and the time of day, as well as whose island you're on. All in all, it's a good time waster, and I'd give it a C tier. Comparable to Minecraft's, but a lot more enjoyable in my mind. Next up we have Terraria. Terraria is a really good game in my opinion. I absolutely adore it. What we are going to discuss, however, is not the game's actual gameplay, but it's fishing. And I'm gonna be honest, I love it. But yes, I enjoy the game's fishing. It's very calming and unique, with the fish and crates playing a vital role in the game that you could go without, but do greatly help you. I mean, some of the fish are used in potions or dishes, and can change up your gameplay. Are they all good or useful? No, but it's still interesting to use. Plus, quest fish can provide you with random gear, and anyone who's played Terraria knows you need at least 3 of these quest items to get a really useful item, which makes it so people have to fish. Here's the reason why I like to play it though. I play Summoner. I don't have to focus on enemies that come up to me when I'm fishing, and it allows me to grind relatively easily, making the experience more of a relaxing time than any other class. The fish also vary based on where you go and what elevation you're at. The blood movement also makes fishing a lot more intriguing, because if you go to the ocean and fish, you get to fight special enemies, and the Dreadnought is adding even more to the experience. I actually really enjoy this, so it gets B tier. All in all, good. Plus the mod that adds fishing as an actual attack type, it's kind of interesting. Next catch, Hollow Cure.
You like VTubers?
Why are you out in this lake? And yes, I do indulge in some, but I mostly like the Vampire Survivors and overall feeling of that gameplay loop. And this kind of scratches that itch, but that doesn't really matter. How are the fish? For those of you who have played this game, you may know that there is a section called the Hollow House. It is just an area where you can go to acquire money in another way besides, you know, playing the main gameplay. In it, there is this tiny little pond you can go to and use different rods with. The interesting gimmick here is that each rod has its own level, and each level has more fish, usually 2 more than the previous. And the actual fishing part is more along the line of a rhythm game, DDR-esque specifically. It is kind of interesting, but the only problem is I'm bad, and I can't really get better, so it automatically keeps it in B tier. Fuck you. Don't think I won't be petty. Unfortunately, no game could ever be S tier. No game except Stardew Valley, baby! Let's go! Listen, if you think I wasn't putting Stardew Valley at the top of this list, you're crazy. And if any of you are complaining about the difficulty of the fishing, that's a skill issue. Get it together. Get better. Listen, all the intricate fish you can catch, all the varying types, places, status, and difficulty makes it fun. Plus, crab traps and other benefits you get from leveling up can greatly change 2 people's playstyles. And the reward / difficulty when it comes to these activities, if you are playing solo and you start fishing, it's probably the best way to go when it comes to making money. Time stops whenever you start the minigame, which means you can gain a full inventory by the end of the day. Well, as long as you're good enough. Not to mention the fact that there are legendary fish that are extremely difficult that test the player's skill and actively yield a greater price for a one-time catch. And the fish ponds. Oh, don't get me started on the fish ponds. The fish ponds reward you for hoarding fish by having them yield specific byproduct and produce more passive fish. Immaculate. Only S tier. Don't argue with me or do it. Doesn't matter. My taste might have been a little corrupted by this toxic water, but that's okay. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Listen, I had fun making this, and I would love it if you stated your favorite fishing minigames, or if you don't like this aspect of games, why? Please explain to me. Thank you so much for watching and listening to a crazy man rant about probably the stupidest topic in any games. I do hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a very fantastic day, and see ya.
"ひとりすがをつく